Hey everyone, and welcome to the Always Ready podcast brought to you by HARMAN Automotive. Now, this is a program for automotive engineering and product management professionals and enthusiasts, and we explore customer-centric mobility experiences and discuss the technologies driving them and so much more. Now, if we haven't met before, my name is Oisin Lunny. I help great people, companies and organizations tell their best stories through podcasts, experiences, digital media and also events. It is a great pleasure to welcome to the podcast Jonathan Pierce, who is the Director of Experiential R&D at HARMAN Automotive. Now, I know you're a music lover with a fascinating history, Jonathan, and Jonathan works to create the world's best automotive audio experiences. Now, through research and robust measurement techniques, he seeks to understand the relationship between artists' intent and listener experience. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
No, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me.
Awesome to see you. So listen, in your bio, as mentioned, it says you're a music lover. I'd love for you to, let's start the podcast with a bit more about your good self. So talk to us a bit about what you do in HARMAN today, how long you've been doing it, and also how you got there.
Yeah. Well, so my title is Director of Global Experiential R&D, which is certainly a mouthful. It barely fits on a business card. But simply what my team is here to do is to train individuals, train users to be able to listen to music and then communicate what they like and dislike about those experiences, quantify those opinions, and then help our engineers create the best branded audio experiences. So I'm one of the few teams who is always welcoming opinions from individuals, and there is no wrong opinion. Right? It's just about what we do with those opinions that matters.
Phenomenal. Okay. And the thing is, you are really bringing out the best possible in-car audio experiences by leveraging the power of people listening and people kind of sharing their opinions, as you say. But I know that you have an interesting kind of backstory in terms of how you actually, how do you get to be the head of the experiential R&D team dealing with car audio?
Yeah, it's quite remarkable to think that I've been in this automotive audio role, for nearly 23 years. I've been involved in the industry for 23 years. So I'm one of those people who loved music probably more than anybody should. Right. And I traded a football for a guitar probably my sophomore year in high school. And then I was dead set on either being on a stage and performing. But then you kind of quickly find out that there's certain talented people in the world that's reserved for them. And we can't all make that cut. So I wanted to be around audio in the most creative way possible. Right. And so I started learning about being a studio engineer and learning how to be a mixing engineer. So I found a school in Florida called Full Sail, which people are probably familiar with. So I went down there and I got a degree in recording arts, and I said, okay, I'm ready to be the next Dr. Dre. Where's my job? Well, then you kind of find out those jobs are few and far between, especially in the age where people can just record albums, from their bedroom. But I still wanted to be around sounds. I wanted to be around the creative process. So my mother actually was reading a newspaper, because those existed back in the day. And there was an article, an opening for a job at HARMAN Automotive in a small town in Indiana. And she said, I recommend you go down for the interview. And I did. They hired me that day. It was for something called Advanced Technology and Development at the time, which was really the precursor to experiential R&D. And I started working in this user research function. And what I came to find out was there were people like me working in automotive audio, specifically at HARMAN. They were either failed musicians or successful musicians or people that did recording on the side. And I came to appreciate that you can make a great album. You can spend a lot of time recording great sound, but if the playback side, right, isn't as capable, it really doesn't matter. So there's an equal responsibility on the production and reproduction side. So I fell in love with the reproduction side. And then, of course, people love to listen to music in their cars. So here I am, 23 years later.
I love that backstory so much, and thank you to your mother for sending you in the direction of that. That's brilliant. I mean, this is a common thread. The more people I speak to at HARMAN and interview and hang out with at amazing trade shows like CES, the more you get to know that it really is full of people who love great audio, they love great music, great sound, and there's so much passion in the company. It's absolutely authentic and genuine, and HARMAN has also a knack of finding great people. The ad finds you at the right time.
That's what it is, right?
Brilliant.
The universe comes calling, you've got to listen.
It's destiny. It's HARMAN destiny. That's what we're calling it. So let's talk about the science of sound, because we've spoken a lot about the passion, the art, the heart of sound, but there's a lot of science there. How do you go about actually measuring sound and quantifying it
Yeah.
and kind of mixing this with all these different perspectives of the folks that you've trained,
Sure.
the team that you run.
Mhm.
What happens under the hood of the experiential R&D?
Right. Well, at its basic form, there's two ways to measure audio: objective and subjective. Right. Now, objective is microphones or binaural heads. Right. And those are certainly valuable measurement techniques, but they don't have opinions. People do. And I've been in this industry long enough to know that we could EQ a system to be as flat or neutral or free of colorations as much as possible. So on a chart, it looks like objectively it should be good. Someone's going to listen to it and they're going to have a different opinion. They're just going to, right? So we really need to understand that relationship between what human opinion, right, really means and then what those objective measurements are also telling us. And where we have correlation between those two is where we make thoughtful change, like understanding that relationship primarily.
Right, right. I mean, but in terms of, actual nuts and bolts, just again, another automotive pun, if you like, what do you do in terms of what you measure? I mean, how many, systems we
Yep,
look at,
sure.
how many vehicle audio systems, how many points are you measuring on a
Right.
regular basis? What happens in terms of those numbers?
Right. So I've got 10 employees working across 6 different regions, major markets in the world. And it's primarily their job to recruit individuals who are not engineers, right? Who are not associated with these projects, and giving them a systematic training, which mainly consists of a common language to describe what they like and dislike. Now, some of these terms might sound a little bit funny to most people, like muddy, tubby, piercing, honky, harsh, but I promise you they are actually well accepted audio terms that engineers will understand and can associate back to frequency response or other objective measures. Right. So these individuals in these different regions will look to train upwards of hopefully 40 or so individuals. So we have a nice diverse sample of listeners in each region, and we'll bring in one car a week, and we'll have at least 15 of these listeners come down and listen in a known reference room environment, and then go into a waiting car, and they're going to compare the sound quality of that reference room to the car. And they're going to evaluate that across 4 different attributes, being spectral, which is the balance of the bass, the mid-range, and the treble; spatial, which is localization, so stage width, vocal image location, immersiveness; dynamics, which is level-based issues, turn the system up, turn the system down, do you like the experience; and finally we have integrity, which we are dealing with experiences that do buzz and rattle because they are vehicles. We've all experienced this, and we have to account for those nuisance variables as well. So we're going to do this probably, we'll say about 300 times a year across all those different locations. And that then goes into a massive database. But then we have all that objective data from these vehicles. And then we have the subjective sentiments as well. And then we start drawing some, again, meaningful correlations, setting targets based on these large databases that represent different markets and different regions. And then we can come to our customers and say, you want to be better than this competitive set? Well, we have all this data on these cars already. Let's set a meaningful target that we know we can achieve based on the speakers we're putting in here and the tuning time we're going to get, right, to develop the system as well. So it's really a nice guide for the customer and our engineers to be able to have that roadmap and know what levers to pull to be able to achieve that best in class standard.
That's astonishing. I mean, this is really getting a glimpse into a process that many people probably don't know exists.
Exactly.
It's so specific. And does this kind of happen in parallel with the development of the new automotive models, the automobile models? Does this kind of go in parallel up to the point where there's an actual product being launched? Or how does that kind of work?
Yeah, I mean, we're very early on in the process. So this happens at, RFI, RFQ, where we're winning the award for new business and we're ideating the architecture we're going to put into this system. We certainly have a brand signature we have to adhere to as well. So we understand how that brand is theoretically supposed to sound and be received by the public. So we're setting a target based on all of these different factors. But the most important thing is that no matter the flavor of the brand, it has to be good sound.
Yeah.
Right? That's the most important thing.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing. And talk to us a bit about the role of trained listeners in this process. I mean, are these trained listeners superior to just your everyday, man on the street listener? What's the difference? What's
Yeah,
the
I mean, I wouldn't call them superior in that, again, their data is just more repeatable and more reliable because they have a common language to describe what they like and dislike, right? You find less outliers when you train listeners, right? They're simply, again, just more consistent. because their data is more statistically significant, it means you can infer to a larger population as well. So that's what the bang for your buck. And Harman's lucky in that we're an audio company, so it's easy to recruit individuals and have them walk away from their desk, for an hour because it's just baked into the culture. It's just baked into what we do. And we find a lot of people are very excited to actually learn about listening to audio and being able to appreciate it, using these attributes. So we're also, I think, bringing a boost in the culture in the office as well, and like tying it back into our passion.
Nice, nice. I love it. Let's zoom out a bit and look at the kind of global picture. Do you find that the concept or even the measured concept of ideal sound, does it vary by location or geography or demographic? I mean, what happens there?
It's a very common question, and I think it's something that we're all interested in. I know, like Dr. Sean Olive is also a fellow Harmanite. He's conducted a lot of controlled listening tests for consumer products like headphones on almost every continent. I think except for Antarctica, it seems like these days. What they have found is similar to what we have found in automotive. When we evaluate the same sound quality experience, in our case, we'll say the same vehicle with the same tuning, with the same hardware, verified objectively, there is not a cultural bias that we are measuring in a controlled setting, much like people would believe.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when I have conversations with colleagues about this. Um, I've always told people, and we talked about this earlier, if Lady Gaga plays a concert in Shanghai versus New York City, do they mix differently for the live show? They don't. They don't. But I think as the science provides more evidence, if we start seeing that there is a cultural bias, there's nothing wrong with that. It actually enables Harman to then specifically tailor the sound quality specific to those regions, right, to meet that cultural need. So that's another advantage we have in measuring all these cars.
Excellent, excellent. So there's kind of no subjective difference really, but it's about like the context and where people are listening, and that's where Harman can really, excel in those situations. Talk to us about what we're going to be seeing from the experiential R&D team at CES 2025.
Well, we have a clever analogy of tying in the experience of sensory testing for tasting food and also listening to sound quality. Right? So it's very important is say if you're a chocolatier, which we're using chocolate in this case, right? For trained tasters to have certain attributes they utilize when they're eating food and being able to dissect, say, the balance of the sugar and the cocoa and the cream, so that chocolatier can take that feedback and go back and create a better taste experience. And so we're going to be educating people about the attributes that we use to evaluate sound quality, drawing those parallels to food, but then talking about how there are different flavors of food. And in this case, we have a bowl of chocolate, and there's different flavors of chocolate in that bowl. And there's different flavors represented in there, but overall, objectively, like the chocolate is good. Like no matter which one you eat, we have many different flavors of brands at Harman. And so we're often asked, like, well, how do they sound different? How do you make sure they all sound good? Well, we do this through user research, through user studies. All right, so while we have all these flavors, by using all these trained listeners and listening to all these sound experiences, we can guarantee that there's a connection there emotionally with the sound quality, regardless of the flavor that they're actually tasting.
Yes, and I would like to stress the bowl of little chocolates that you have here is enormous. I've seen a lot of people, I don't know if the chocolates are part of the appeal of your demonstrations here at CES, but the bowl, I can see it right now from where we're sitting, it's a bit less full than it
Yes.
was earlier. I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
chocolate aside, what's the reaction been of the folks coming up and seeing your demo and listening to you talk at
I think
CES?
it's a very clever tie-in. It's something again in the world of sensory testing. It makes sense because the food and beverage industry has been doing this type of testing for many, many, many years. The audio world's a little bit slow to catch on to it. It seems like, but I think there's an aha moment for a lot of them. Because we start with the chocolate and we talk about how we can't just use objective statistics to determine if you're going to like the taste of something or not. For example, if I said this chocolate contains 100 calories, 12 grams of sugar, 46 grams of carbohydrates, would that be enough to predict your overall satisfaction? Or would you prefer to test it yourself, experiencing the taste, the texture, and the aroma? It's the same thing with audio. Audio has its own set of nutritional facts. Facts such as how loud something will play, or the frequency extension, or power ratings, or ingredients such as number of speakers or features. And those are meaningful statistics, but they're not great predictors of consumer satisfaction. So I think that tie-in with people talking about nutritional facts versus actual human experience has been very thought-provoking.
Phenomenal. That's great. Yeah. And it is a great metaphor. I've seen many pennies drop here as you were going through the presentation, for myself included. It's like all of the chocolates in the bowl are high quality. They're all delicious, but which one will you like? That's very, very subjective. And you kind of quantified the framework for actually recording this and gathering, data from thousands and thousands of people. It's utterly fascinating. So I'd like to invite you to move from your chocolate bowl to your crystal ball. And tell us what you think is the future of kind of in-car audio from your point of view. Where do you think it's all going?
I mean, look, first of all, car audio is just cool.
Yes.
There's something synonymous with just driving and listening to music. Again, as we spoke about, I think that for a lot of people, their car audio system is the most capable audio experience that they own. What I mean by that is by sheer power, DSP in the amplifier, the number of speakers in a car. Some vehicles have upwards of 32 speakers in them.
Right.
Yeah. That's more speakers than most people have in their house. Right. And that's phenomenal. But there's some challenges with cars as well. I mean, you're not sitting in the sweet spot.
Yeah.
That can be a challenge. But also, we do know where you're sitting in the car, and therefore we can tune every car to be, repeatable based on that seating location. I think the future of car audio is starting to evolve a little bit with immersive audio, features like Dolby Atmos. I know Samsung just announced, their own 3D processing as well. I think competition in that space is going to be really great. I think that it's going to bring consumers a whole new way of listening to their favorite music in a way they never thought of before. It's no longer going to be on this 2D plane, right? Where it's just a beat and the melody. It's going to be a lot more visceral. It's going to be a lot more tactile for people because haptics are going to come in the seats as well. Right? We're going to start shaking seats as the bass hits a little bit more. So I think it's going to become like a full sensory experience in the future.
Hashtag mind blown. That's fantastic. Well, thank you to you and your team for changing the future of in-car audio one chocolate bar at a time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to talk about this. I'm extremely passionate about this topic. So yeah, thank you.
100%. Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you again. So folks at home, I hope you enjoyed that discussion as much as I did. And I can tell you the chocolates were delicious. They're all gone now, I'm afraid. My dear friends, please spread the word about these fascinating discussions. Visit car.harman.com and explore.harman.com for so much more great content. Do like, share and subscribe, and tell your friends, family and colleagues about the Always Ready podcast brought to you by HARMAN Automotive. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time.